My twin sister Maureen, who just gave me that look. And the thing that's really, I think, fantastic about us as twins is that we have little to nothing in common, which is difficult as a relationship, complicated probably for our parents, but entertaining for others. And so to give you a sense, so this is me, and I routinely wear high heels. I wear high heels so much that I'm hiking the Grand Canyon at the end of the month, and I have had to purchase flats so that my legs can stretch regularly. I do my hair like this a lot, and it takes 30 plus minutes, and I think that that is a reasonable allocation of my time and my resources. Like, I am making a series of choices to live my life in Phoenix. My twin sister, on the other hand, knew as early as when we were in high school that just as I knew I wanted to be a reporter who wrote about stupid, meaningless stuff, my sister knew that she wanted to be a park ranger. And since then, she has become a full-fledged manager and park ranger person with the National Park Service. She also, P.S., is a wilderness EMT. She can save your life with an acorn. 2, she also is wait, I wrote it down. I want to get the words right. You are a law enforcement ranger, which means she can shoot you. Odds are she won't, and you don't have that job now, I know, but she did have that job for a while, and she said, P.S., everyone that she arrests is just getting high, drunk, or speeding. So don't do those things in national parks. My sister would totally get you. And that has meant a few things as we've moved into our adult life, which is mostly that whenever I go see my sister, I A, have to take a vacation, and B, I have to get out of my comfort zone. And she's really a good sister, because like the last time I went to see her, you know, I didn't have a lot of warm clothes for Mammoth Lakes, California, and she's like, it's fine, I have whatever you don't have. I appreciate that you live in a place that has no seasons. And she said, you know, my husband and I will give you the warm bedroom because we realize you've lost the ability to regulate your body temperature in Phoenix. True. My bedroom was so warm. The other ones were so cold. And I was like, oh, this is the best. I can't imagine if I had to stay in one of those other ones. So, but it wasn't always this way, because we grew up in a regular-sized town, and we had a lot in common, because we went to the same high school, and we had the same lives, and then we went to the same college. But there was this one trip that we took that sort of showed me that maybe things were going to be different, or that I wasn't the same as her. And not that I didn't already know that, but this sort of like drew a very bright line around it. And that's when we went to our home region of Indiana, and that's the Indiana Dunes National Lake Shore area. It's 2 spaces, one's the national park and one's a state park. And this was where we had grown up. Incidentally, it's also where my mom started out as a park ranger and where she met my dad. Yes, Indiana. So we go up there for like a little tiny trip, just the weekend. Maureen had joined the outing club, and she made friends with this kid named Andy. And Andy and Mo and I were going to go up to Michigan City, our hometown, and go see the dunes, and we're going to show Andy the dunes. And it's great, because we'd spent our childhoods playing at the beach and hanging out in this area. And so we went on a hike, and I had a date later that night, so I had bought these like new super dark wash jeans, and I'd worn Doc Martens, because for some reason I thought whatever I would wear hiking would be what I would wear on the date later. Like, to this day, I don't understand why I thought that. I don't know, though. I really don't. So, I was not properly dressed for such an outing, but my sister and Andy took me along anyway. And I have to describe the area. So you're thinking sand dunes like the Sahara, but the sand dunes of Lake Michigan aren't all like that. Many of them are wooded. They're a very diverse area. It's called a riparian ecosystem, and it's just basically like where water comes into contact with woods, and it's great and it's beautiful. So the dunes there are straight dunes that are filled with sand, but then eventually they become wooded and they're filled with trees. And in this one little area, there was a tree that had fallen across 2 dunes, and a creek had come out of the woods into the lake. So this is all pretty normal and lovely and gorgeous. And Andy and Maureen were going to climb across the tree. The tree was really big, right? Super, super old. It had fallen across 2 dunes. So you get across it by like putting your body around the tree, kind of like scooching. But Andy was like a really experienced rock climber. So he has that kid at Purdue who like could pull his body up by just his fingertips, which is really something. And my sister like aspired to this and is quite fit and very muscular. And so she also was fairly proficient at skittering across this tree. Myself, on the other hand, had like not really worked out or been athletic I couldn't even say since high school because I was god-awful on every sporting team I was ever on. So like I'm just not sporty. But I'm also in Doc Martens and like new tight-ish jeans. And I'm like scooching across this tree. And like I had a moment of clarity that alcoholics sometimes describe where like everything comes into focus. And I realized that I was unlikely that I was going to get across this tree. But it did not occur to me to tell my sister at that moment that she should call for rescue help. It only occurred to me to think, well, I gotta keep going because I can't get backwards, and I gotta keep going forward because that's where the rest of the dune is, and I should just scooch across this tree. And so I reached for like the next handhold, and had I been more dexterous or more strong or more taller or stronger, I would have been able to reach it just fine, and the day would have been relatively uneventful. As it was, though, I fell like 10 to 15 feet. Maureen and I argue about the distance. I fell into the creek and I broke the second lumbar vertebrae in my back. It shattered. Yes, this is the part where you're like, oh my God, I can't believe she's so healthy now. And it was really frightening, and it was so frightening. I had broken other bones in my body before, and I knew what that felt like. It was so frightening, I prayed in the moment. Yeah, you can laugh. It's okay. It doesn't mean you don't love Jesus. But I prayed, and I was like, oh God. And then my sister, who like I think also loves Jesus, was like, stop praying. This is no time for that. Which I am like, this is the best time for this. I don't know what is wrong with my body. And she's like, get out of the water. P.S. It's November. It's November 8th. So Lake Michigan is a cold place. It's not like a snowy place yet, but it is no place to be wet. And so she and Andy kind of like got me out of the water, and now I'm kind of like laying against the sand dune. I'm not in the water anymore, but I'm wet. And you know, we're like assessing, and I'm like, Mo, I don't know what's wrong with me. And she's like, well, we've got to get you off the lake, because like the sun is setting. It's time to go. I have a date soon. So she's like, well, we gotta go. So you put one arm around Andy and you put one arm around me, and we're gonna walk. Can you walk? And of course I'm like, yeah, I'm sure I'm fine. So we're like walking along the beach, and then it soon becomes like really painful. I start to recognize the symptoms of hypothermia, which my dad, as a former fire chief, had told us what they were, so I knew what they were, and I was like, this is not good. So my sister totally rescues me, and she runs 1.5 miles or something down the beach in sand. And just before you think that's impressive, let me tell you what the sand is like on Lake Michigan. It's not like the sand where you're thinking of. We have this amazing sand that's filled with silica, and it's called the Singing Sands. It's one of only 2 places in the world that the sand is like this, and it's very slippery, and it makes a swiss, swiss, swiss sound when you walk across it. It also makes it really tough to run in. So Mo is a total hero, very fit. She makes it to the parking lot. She calls the EMT people. They totally rescue me. I'm carried out of the park on a back brace. But I was back at Purdue Sunday night. That happened Friday night. I was at Purdue Sunday night in a hideous brace that went from here to here. And before you feel too sorry for me, you should feel sorry for my sister, who had to put me in and out of it every day for 3 months. I also got fat because your metabolism slows to a halt when you're encased in plastic constantly. I did get made fun of at a frat party. True story. Very traumatizing. But my friend said, if you leave now, you'll never forgive yourself. True. Never leave a party if you get made fun of for being in a back brace. So I knew in that moment that like following my sister down the paths of her adventuresome life was like perhaps not always going to be my best move. But I also accepted that sometimes when you want to see the people that you love, they're not necessarily just like coming to Phoenix all the time or necessarily to where you are. And you could take that metaphorically or literally. So this is how I found myself over the years. One, being lowered into a cave in Portal, Arizona by her now husband, but who at the time was just a guy she liked. Yes. And that was really scary because he also knew that I'd broken my back in college and that lowering a girl into a cave about 10 feet who'd broken her back was kind of a dicey proposition when she's this high-strung. But it was fine. It's also how I found myself, walking through Telluride with her at, 10,000 feet? I don't know, 1 billion feet, and like having to stop every 5 feet because I couldn't acclimate to the distance between Phoenix at 600 feet and Telluride. It's how I found myself like looking over the edge of the Black Canyon of the Gunnison, just marveling at its incredibly like sheer and austere beauty and thinking constantly, I'm so afraid of heights. Why are we here? You work here? And then, she totally tells you stories about the people who try to kill themselves there, right? And that sometimes they live, and she rescues them, and it's okay. So It's also how not a terribly long time ago, I was visiting her in Tahoe, and she convinced me to go rock climbing. This is how good of a sport I am. I went rock climbing with her after this, like knowing I'd already fallen a distance and broken my back. I know the wages of the fall. Some of you perhaps are afraid of heights in a theoretical sense. Get over it. Like, I know what happens when you hit the ground. I've experienced that stretch of the seconds where you consciously think to yourself, I am falling. Like, that is a real thing that exists. You're aware of it. So I'm all harnessed up, and Maureen is belaying me, and I keep going because I'm like fairly impressed with how strong I am, because I'm like, whoa, I'm totally climbing this hill, and I'm totally climbing this rock. I'm fine. And then all of a sudden I was not fine, and I don't know why, but I was about 60 feet up, and I was like, Maureen, I want down. And she's like, you're fine. And I was like, no, I want down. And I was like, done. And now Maureen is a pusher. Also, all of her friends are sporty, so when you push a sporty person and you say you're fine, they keep going, right? They're like, you're right, I'm totally fine, I'm totally gonna kill this. I'll get to the top. No, I was like, I am done, and then I spelled it. Which is a weird thing to do because it doesn't help the person below understand what you're trying to say. Because now I'm screaming, I'm like, D-O-N-E, done! And she then begins laughing hysterically, which makes me cry, because I am like still dangling, and I'm a baby. Don't be too hard on my sister. I'm a total crier. So now I am like so nervous and scared and worked up, and my heart is beating, and she is laughing at me because I just spelled that I was done. Then, like, her friends come from around the corner, and of course, because they're nice, they look at her like she's a Satan harpy, and they're like, Mo, why is Megan crying, hanging 60 feet up in the air? Shouldn't you get your sister down? What's wrong with her? And she's all like, she's fine. So I get down. There's this, like, moment when I get down, and I'm just looking at her, like, all abject, and she's like, I wasn't going to let you fall. Now, given our previous experience when I fell off the log, I knew that that was not entirely true. Like, I was either going to make decisions she couldn't account for, or she was going to let me fall, but admittedly, she was belaying me. The odds of her letting me fall were minuscule. And I was like, I know, and that was fine. And since then, I've obviously continued to visit my sister, knowing full well what I was getting into every single visit. And what it's taught me is that certainly, sometimes to see the people we love, we do have to travel. And for me, it means I have to get out of my comfort zone. A comfort zone, I would like to say, as a reporter, is fairly large. And that's how, not long ago, I found myself learning to ski on a real mountain in Mammoth Lakes, California. And this was such a traumatizing prospect that a man who like works with me, who doesn't even care enough about me to be here tonight, looked at me pointedly before I left on my vacation. I'm not saying we're dating, I'm just saying, like, he's this guy. He was like, Megan, don't go skiing. And I was like, you didn't even know, you even knew I was going on vacation? And he's like, I'm looking at you, and I know you, and I've known you for years. I'm telling you, don't do it. I've been skiing. You can't ski. And like, I assured him, if I felt in my gut that this was a bad move, which I think we're clear, I cannot trust my gut because I'll do whatever my sister tells me to do. I was like, I will not go skiing. And so then, you know, we go there, and she gets me on her gear, and by the way, she loaned me everything because her house is an REI, so she gave me all the gear I needed, and I was all set, and like I hung out on the bunny hill. And turns out, I was not a terrible skier, relatively proficient, totally was doing it great. And at the end of the day, by the way, you guys should totally know, before I started my ski lesson, I did call my mother from the top of the mountain, and I said out loud, Mom, I'm just letting you know I'm gonna ski now. And like, if this doesn't work out, I really love you. Also because I love my mom and I wanted to call her, but also because I have a real taste for drama. And so, also, this little tiny part of me thought, I've broken my back. I know how bad this gets. And when we got done at the end of the day, Maureen looked at me and she was like, you did great. You did so well. I knew you would be fine. And that is my favorite part about going on vacation with my sister, is because I never know I'm going to be fine. And I always trust her.